Someone didn't hit send on an application to fund homeless services for Bloomington-Normal, and now several human service organizations are scrambling as the need grows.
It's a little devastating for our community.
That's coming up on WGLT's Sound Ideas. Good evening, I'm John Norton. Also on today's show, the city of Bloomington hopes to avoid changes to a popular public works program after one company pulls out.
Bulky waste is something as a service that the public in Bloomington absolutely loves.
And the city of Bloomington recognizes its top student submissions from its Black History Essay Contest.
Young and I both challenged the limits, achieving what others couldn't have imagined.
Those stories follow a Bloomington-Normal news update. This is Sound Ideas on 89.1 WGLT and WGLT.org, part of the NPR network.
Support for WGLT comes from Bloomington-Normal Audiology. Hear My Story continues with local patients Ralph and Carol Weisheit.
Why do people wait? We don't wait when we can't see. We get glasses. So why don't you get a hearing aid? Because, you miss out on so much.
Ralph and Carol's full story can be found at bnaudiology.com.
From the campus of Illinois State University in Normal, this is WGLT's news magazine, Sound Ideas. Good evening, I'm John Norton. A Bloomington-based nonprofit and lead for a federal program geared toward ending homelessness missed a grant application deadline. Now, McLean County social services organizations are feeling the effects of missed funding opportunities. WGLT's Melissa Ellen spoke to the organizations about the impacts and next steps.
PATH, short for Providing Access to Help in Bloomington, has had its share of ups and downs over the past year with high staff turnover across senior leadership positions. That includes the combined CEO and executive director role. Despite this, the nonprofit remained the regional head of a federal program aimed at helping people experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity. It's called the Continuum of Care, and PATH oversees the central Illinois area. That covers McLean County and several surrounding counties. As lead, PATH manages grant applications and allocations. Liam Wheeler was recently appointed grants administrator for the organization's Homeless Services Division. He says the people who came before him seemingly missed deadlines that impacted several organizations. The fallout, he adds, is devastating.
Essentially, someone just didn't click submit on an application. And it's a small error, but it's one that cost us greatly.
The error occurred before Wheeler was at PATH and current interim CEO Adam Carter took over. The amount of organizations supported between fiscal year 2022 and 2023 dropped by 5. Wheeler says PATH itself didn't receive a grant that it's historically been gifted.
Even our own company is going to be severely impacted.
In addition to PATH, the Salvation Army of McLean County has lost out on over $90,000 that would have paid case managers. These people support those staying in the shelter. Joanna Callahan is the Regional Social Service Director with Salvation Army. She says the local chapter has received this funding for over a decade. However, it's not in dire straits after losing it. Callahan says there was room in the budget to accommodate the loss of this grant.
There's always the possibility that something may happen. The funding source may switch what priorities that they're going to be funding that year.
Callahan adds that Salvation Army is being mindful about spending. Expenses for repairs, including a recently burst pipe, and now case managers, are coming from the same pool of money. This notice came almost at the same time that Salvation Army fell short on its Red Kettle fundraising campaign of $650,000. The group raised $618,000. Callahan says it was a wealthy goal and available funds will go toward local programs and staff. Meanwhile, Mid-Central Community Action in Bloomington is fundraising to pay rent on 6 housing units in Mayor's Manor that lost funding. Unlike Salvation Army, Executive Director Tammy Foley says Mid-Central knew that this grant had an expiration date, but it had been looking to PATH to help secure another funding source.
So our residents that had that funding have no way to pay their rent.
Foley says Mayor's Manor is already hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt to Mid-Central, and Mid-Central is willing to go even more in debt to keep people housed.
Even if we don't have funding to keep them there, we'll keep them there.
Other organizations in McLean County that were impacted include Crisis Nursery, housed in Bright Point, and Recycling Furniture for Families in Bloomington. And areas outside McLean County in the continuum might feel greater loss because they already have fewer resources than Bloomington-Normal. Liam Wheeler with PATH pointed to organizations in Kankakee and Lincoln. He says he doesn't think anyone else in the continuum of care was informed of grants that they might have been eligible for, which is part of PATH's lead duties.
It's not only that people have lost out on funding, but that new players haven't been invited to compete for that same funding as well.
These organizations are now looking to fundraise. Tammy Foley with Mid-Central Community Action says she's been collaborating with the Illinois Housing Development Authority to see what grants might be available. The funding wouldn't come in immediately, though. Mid-Central is also continuing to work with PATH to find alternatives while fundraising internally. Foley adds that with Wheeler in charge, she thinks the continuum of care is going to rewrite itself quickly. Joanna Callahan with Salvation Army called the Red Kettle campaign a blessing. Although the group didn't necessarily meet its goal, she says the funds will help the organization recover. Liam Wheeler says he and PATH are exploring alternative grant opportunities for everyone in the continuum, including completely new funding sources. They're also looking to expand the continuum's reach to new organizations.
It's heartbreaking that it took this and a completely new team and fresh eyes to walk into someone else's problem and to correct that, but we're not hiding from that, and we know what we need to do.
I'm Melissa Ellen.
This is the second time in the last few months that a communication breakdown cost PATH a federal grant to provide homeless services. The town of Normal indicated in January that PATH failed to report required data for a community development block grant of $24,000. The money instead was going to Unit 5 schools and the Salvation Army.
Support for WGLT mental health coverage comes from Report for America and Chestnut Health Systems, caring for the community's physical and mental health and celebrating 50 years of service.
Coming up tomorrow on Sound Ideas, pickleball has grown in popularity as a sport that looks easy to play. It's also easy to get hurt if you don't take proper steps to play it safe. You'll hear from an orthopedic surgeon in Bloomington on tomorrow's show.
The housing market has been stuck for a while now. High mortgage rates, sellers who would not leave. Now, though, buyers might finally have an opening. We'll tell you about it next time on Marketplace.
Listen to Marketplace beginning at 5:30 this afternoon on WGLT, sponsored by CEFCU.
The new host of Top Chef says even experience in a world-class kitchen won't guarantee victory for this season's contestants.
If the Top Chef challenge was to run your own restaurant, we could go in there and I'm sure they'd all succeed wonderfully, but it's not.
We talked to former winner and now host of Top Chef, Kristen Kish, tomorrow on Morning Edition from NPR News.
I'm co-host Dave Martinez. Join us for Morning Edition weekdays from 4 to 9 a.m. on WGLT.
This is Sound Ideas, WGLT's news magazine. I'm John Norton. The mayor of Bloomington has a lot on his plate right now. Uncertainty about staff leadership as the city manager may head to Arizona. A city need to find a new contractor for its bulky waste collection program, and ongoing talks about the future of mental health programming delivered by the county. In this interview with WGLT's Charlie Schlenker, Mayor Mboka Malamwe is still not saying much about the potential departure of city manager Tim Gleason.
Well, at this point, I do not have anything to share, and I'm going to leave it at that. Certainly, we had a closed session discussion, which is closed, so I'm not prepared to share anything at this time. But would certainly reiterate that we'd like to keep him.
So, is he still considering Florence?
That's something that you'd have to speak to him about. I don't want to speak on his behalf. So,
when do you envision the city manager situation clarifying one way or the other?
Oh, well, again, I don't have a crystal ball. All I could say is that I'm hoping soon, because I know I'm getting questions wherever I go, including you. I'd like for that situation to be resolved fairly soon, so that people can kind of, begin to plan, the next stages of what it is that they're doing, within the city. Whether he's staying, which we would like him to, or, if he's leaving, then we have to start planning for the next stage and look for a replacement.
So is that a week and a half, 2 weeks? What's reasonable?
Yes, that I do not. I can't tell you for sure, but here's what I would hope. I would hope that it would be within a week.
Green Top Grocery has indicated it is in some distress. One of the initial ways in which the city promoted that development was to give a sales tax exemption. The sales tax exemption has lapsed. Would the city consider re-upping that sales tax exemption as a way to try to retain Green Top as a viable business?
I don't know. I think that's certainly what I tell everyone generally when they come to the city. Bring a proposal forward, and then it will be up to the city council as a whole to make a decision. Of course, the staff also will, generally will take a look at, the finances and see if it is something that is doable. I don't know what we would do there. It just depends on what we have in front of us.
Have you talked with Green Top about its situation?
No, have not.
That location has a couple of things in it. How crucial is that for the city to have a viable business in?
I think it is good, but I think just like any business, some businesses do well and some businesses don't do as well. As you know, for example, in Bloomington, we do have restaurants that open and restaurants that close. So that's just, the nature of the market. It'd be great. I mean, I think, just in speaking with a number of, of folks, who have enjoyed having Green Top in the area. It would be great if they could stay.
This is Sound Ideas. I'm Charlie Schlenker. We're talking with Bloomington Mayor Mboka Mwilambwe. LRS Henson Disposal recently told the city of Bloomington it would not re-up its contract for bulky waste disposal, the twice-a-year pickup that a program that the city has. LRS had been dealing with that waste as some of it as construction recycling waste. The Public Works Director, Mose Rickey, has said that they're going to try to contract with Republic for that service. Do you think that will affect the recycling rates? Because Republic has a transfer station which goes to a landfill.
I don't necessarily think so. Again, I don't have a crystal ball, so we'll see how that works. What I can tell you is that bulky waste is something as a service that the public in Bloomington absolutely loves. I do often get residents who reach out asking me when is it, because they want to know, because they do have a number of things, in their on their property that they want to get rid of. So I don't think it's going to affect it just because there's a strong desire from residents to use the program.
But if that waste can't, and none of it can be recycled because it would be going to a landfill, that would seem on its face to indicate there would be an impact on recycling rates.
Yeah, I think that's something that we'll have to wait to see on. We'll see how that's going to work.
Is there an interest in trying to arrange a different approach than Republic? That right now that seems to be the only game in town.
I think I would kind of leave it to, I know Mose is someone who is who's great, just in terms of the work that it does and very committed. So I think they will do the best that they can and look at all the options possible. Of course, it has to make sense, for any other entity to be involved. But if Republic is all we have, then we're going to work with them to try to make the best of it.
Since, as you noted, the program is popular, is there any talk or consideration of expanding it to be more than twice a year? Normal does it on an as-needed basis.
The situation there is a little bit different because when you look at Normal, the geography is a little bit different. Bloomington has, different places, nooks and crannies and alleys that it has to get into, and that's one of the things that we had to spend some time explaining to residents. Hence, the reason for having this program only twice a year, so that it can be more efficient instead of having people going in many different directions.
There's some discussion that Bloomington and Normal want to have a conversation with McLean County about the services that are delivered through the sales tax portion that the town and city give to the county for mental health services, and how the effectiveness of those is gauged. What more do you want to hear from the county about how it's using that money?
Yeah, so I know there has been some conversation just recently, because some of the meetings have been paused by Chairwoman Metzger. So it's been about a little bit more than 5 years since the Behavioral Health and Coordinating Council has been in place. Chairwoman Metzger, came on board as the chair. From what I understand, there had been internal discussions prior, for about a year or so, just to kind of, look at whether or not the group was, meeting expectations and things like that. If only, even just to find out that yes, they are, and then we just kind of keep things the way they are. It comes at a really good time for us to be able to look at that and just kind of evaluate where we are. Certainly for me personally, I do know that the conversation about homeless and as it is associated with mental health has become a little bit more prevalent. So I certainly would welcome some discussions around that and kind of dive into that a little deeper and see what we can do as a whole.
Do you think adding services to the homeless would require an amendment to the existing agreement, or is there a clause in the existing agreement that would contemplate use of that money for homeless services?
Yeah, I'd have to take a closer look, at the agreement, but certainly a part of homelessness is related to mental health for some folks anyways. I would hope that it's not something that requires some major overhaul, and that there is some room for flexibility there.
What do you want to say about the current metrics that are used to measure the effectiveness of what's already happening? Are you satisfied with that?
Well, I haven't heard that there are any concerns. So personally, I didn't hear. We have someone on the board, on the council, who serves there, and I haven't heard that there are huge issues with that, with those metrics. So I think I could say we're generally satisfied, but always open to look into things a little bit deeper. Because I haven't looked at that, in great detail.
Is that something that you should be looking at?
Yeah, definitely. As we are having more conversations about that, that's certainly something that we're going to do to help inform some of the different things that we might propose.
That's Bloomington Mayor Mboka Malamwe. He spoke with WGLT's Charlie Schlenker. Stories and conversations around Bloomington-Normal and McLean County. This is WGLT's Sound Ideas. The city of Bloomington has announced this year's winners of its annual Black History Essay Contest. Among them, Sarah Gua. She's a 7th grader at Evans Junior High School. This week, WGLT will air the winners reading their essays, and we'll start with Sarah Gua, who lifts up an early conservationist from undeserved obscurity.
Standing Out in the Woods, an essay of inspiration. From a tiny ant to a towering redwood, nature's grandness and intricacy never fail to impress me. I imagine that Charles Young, a military general turned Sequoia National Park superintendent, felt the same. It saddens me that few will ever hear about Young, let alone admire his work, because he was different from the people around him. Young brought the environment's beauty to the world's attention in a place where economic gains were favored over nature preservation, and white people were valued over black people. My admiration of Young comes from his resilience and divergence from the norms. It's easy to follow the crowd and give up, but Young urges me to defy the herd mentality. He was born into slavery, yet was the first African American to graduate from West Point after being held back as a freshman, and became a park superintendent in a time defined by racism. Young also broke accessibility barriers between people and nature. His challenging of the status quo has led to reinvestment in the outdoors in generations following, and serves as a powerful example for future trailblazers. He is my hero, a redwood in a forest of oaks. As a young girl, I spent hours poring over ornithology books, Living Bird and Nature Friend magazines, or in my backyard studying an insect and a field guide. As I grew, I found myself dreaming about traversing the world with only binoculars and curiosity. Such aspirations were not shared by those around me, and as I transitioned from elementary to middle school, I felt a chilly distance appear, which Young understood, and for similar reasons. Our peers turned away, and for them, nature vanished. Is cutting down the tree and retreating from the trails part of growing up? If so, I never want to grow up. As we become adults, we often lose touch with the beauty of nature. I've always wanted to change this, but when I didn't see immediate results, I felt discouraged. The fact that Young didn't give up makes him a role model to me. When Young assumed leadership of Sequoia National Park in 1903, he faced the daunting task of reopening the public's eyes. Instead of giving up because the goal was hard to achieve, Young focused on the process, reducing poaching, expanding the park, and building a trail, all to achieve the bigger goal of connection. Young and I both challenged the limits, achieving what others couldn't have imagined. His mission started on a small scale, but has surpassed his lifetime. When I look in the mirror, I see Young's ambition, character, and an opportunity to change the world reflected in me, even in small ways like participating in my local birding group. I am becoming a person who stands for what she cares about.
That's Sarah Gua, the first place winner of the middle school division in the City of Bloomington Black History Essay Contest. Listen all this week during Sound Ideas, and you'll hear the students reading their essays. WGLT's Charlie Schlenker produced this reading. And that is Sound Ideas today. WGLT's news magazine is made possible in part by Bloomington-Normal Audiology. I'm John Norton with story help from WGLT's Melissa Ellen and Charlie Schlenker. Ryan Toohey edits Sound Ideas. This is 89.1 WGLT and WGLT.org, part of the NPR network.